We're glad you're here now.
Thank you.
No, you're in charge.
I am.
Yeah, so we haven't begun because we need
we
you
need-
to be here and lead us.
Well, then let's call this meeting to order.
We're lost without you.
Then we're officially calling this meeting to order. Thank you.
Goat herds in the wilderness, so to speak.
Okay, this is my first strategic meeting, James, so walk me through it.
All right, you're in good hands, meaning Lynette is here.
Yeah, right.
Yes, so you've called the meeting to order, your first official order of business. And now we are ready for the pledge if you are, Vice Chair Kennedy.
Sure, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vice Chair Kennedy, would you like me to go ahead and take roll?
Please do.
Thank you. Director Frericks? I'll let the record show that he is waving hello online. He is present.
I am here. Sorry about that.
That's okay, thank you. Gore is absent, Harris absent, Kozlowski?
Here.
Thank you. Sander,
Here.
Zaragoza,
Here.
Saylor,
Here,
Chenier absent, Stallard absent, Vice Chair Kennedy,
Here.
and Chair Jennings is absent. Next up, Vice Chair Kennedy, we have public communications, and I have not received any communications.
Okay, next item.
Next item is our consent item, the remote committee meeting. And this staff is asking and recommending approval to hold this meeting remotely and in a hybrid fashion for any of those who would have wanted to attend in person.
Do we have a motion? Sailor motion makes a motion. Chair will second. Please roll call vote.
Thank you. Director Frericks,
Aye.
Gore is absent, Harris absent, Kozlowski,
Yes.
Sander,
Aye.
Zaragoza,
Aye.
Saylor,
aye.
Chenier absent, Stallard absent, Vice Chair Kennedy,
Aye.
and Chair Jennings is absent. Motion carries.
Next item.
Thank you. Next item is information item number 2, SACOG strategic direction, and James Corliss will present this item.
Okay, thanks, Lynette. Thanks, Chair Kennedy. I've also got a little bit of internet issue here, so just virtually kick me under the table if I'm breaking up. I will try to keep my camera on for now. So this is really the next stopping point on this item around strategic planning for SACOG. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a PowerPoint. We obviously did a very, I think, a really good, healthy deep dive at the SACOG board retreat April 8th, really on these topics. And as if you were there, or if you've been around our previous strategic planning efforts, you know Daniel Kaufman from Third Plateau, who I'll reintroduce you to now. And Daniel will help me. I'm going to walk through a little bit of a brief presentation, tell everybody kind of where we are and revisiting and refining our strategic planning process and documents at SACOG. And then Daniel's got a few things for you as well. So let me start just by sharing a few things here, as long as my screen share will work. Okay. How's that look? Okay, I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna stop my video just so I can preserve bandwidth. Okay, so again, I think as you all remember from the last SBC meeting and from the board retreat, we are engaging and updating our strategic planning documents here at SACOG this year. And I would say that we've been doing this, and because this committee is made up of the former board chairs, the current board leadership, many of you know that we've been doing this since I joined SACOG 5 years ago. And I would say that we've been doing it in an iterative approach. We didn't do it all at once. We didn't stop our work in 2017 when I joined the agency and decide to sort of ask ourselves the big questions. And I don't think this year either, I want to be very clear, neither are this year we're asking ourselves the big, we're not starting from scratch. I think that's really my headline here. But there are pieces, while we have done a lot of work over the last 5 years, in terms of who we are and where we're going, why we matter, what our role is, there are still pieces I think that are missing. And this year, what we want to do is take advantage, I think, of a lot of board interest, enthusiasm, the board retreat, a lot of engagement with our partners, a staff retreat we had a couple of weeks ago, to do a few things. So look at all the elements of a strategic plan. There's a few things here that are missing. First one is a mission statement. Those of you who were there in the afternoon session of the board retreat, I asked you all to recite our mission statement and nobody could, and that wasn't a trick answer, it wasn't a trick question. It was written 12 years ago. It's too long in my mind, hard to remember, and it's just not, I think, relevant to who we are. We don't have a vision statement. We've never had one at SACOG. Well, we haven't had one in the recent memory, and I would like us to do that as well, given a lot of our work around the future and planning and what we want the region to become. We need to tie in and a lot of the elements of our racial equity work, our REI working group, and our forthcoming racial equity action plan. And ideally, we put this all together in a single document, like a strategic plan often has. Okay, let's see. All right. So this is our mission statement. I just wanted to show it to you just as a reminder. You see it once and then you'll have to just completely wipe your memory banks clean and forget about it. But I did want to tell you this is what it is. It's not bad. This was developed in 2010, so not a bad mission statement, but it also is, it fails my first test, which is you can't easily communicate this or remember it. It's too long. And I think it needs to be somewhat updated. So why now? I think there's a lot of interest, like I said, and many of you and a lot of our even new board members in refining and updating our mission and goals. As I said, our recent work around racial equity, as will be these two next slide, the sort of COVID-induced disruption, and also the blueprint plan that we're underway on developing the next long-range plan, I think really has brought to bear some really big questions about the future, what's happening now and its influence on where we're going. The years 2040 and 2050, the board engaged in some of those scenario planning exercises, the board retreat, to begin to kind of in some ways flex our muscle and warm up a little bit around these questions. And then once we're done this, it really is going to, as a strategic plan should, in my mind, both kind of set and really, solidify, I think, sort of the who we are, where we're going, our goals, our objectives, our vision, but also lay a path for the next, say, 3 years, really through the development of this next long-range plan and thereafter. So a little bit about why now. Some of the timing here in the schedule. We were last in front of you in your last SBC meeting, February 7th. We've checked in and done presentations for the regional managers, the city managers, the county execs. Daniel Kaufman here, and this is the document that you have that was sent to you, has done a lot of board interviews and focus groups. I pulled from a lot of those back at the board retreat when I did my presentation in the morning, and you'll see those in, again, Daniel's memo and the attachment. We are now underway on listening sessions for our racial equity action plan, which are pretty broad and expansive, and those are also just excellent ways to gauge people on the issues of race and equity. Our board retreat, our staff retreat, we did a couple of weeks ago, and then just recently our transit coordinating committee as well. So that's what we've done to date. Here to you today on May 9th, and we're going to continue to work with our staff in May and June. And in your next SBC meeting, August 29th, we are planning to come back to you with, at the very least, a draft outline and something for you to respond to around the elements of the strategic plan with a board adoption in fall of 2022. So that is pretty brief explanation of stop that. At least the elements and the timing. Daniel, do you want to pick up on anything here to get the conversation started?
Sure. So we have a few minutes to talk through sort of where we've been with all of you. And the intent here is, as we move into the development of a draft strategic plan, it's going to be based on a lot of different input points that James just identified. What we wanted to do was sort of have a chance for all of you to reflect on two critical input points. One, the board retreat, right, that most of you were all at, and two, this board memo, which summarizes kind of the key themes that emerged through the conversations across the board interviews and focus groups. So I wanted to start with the board retreat. We'll just take a few minutes, I think, on each of these two fronts. Start with the board retreat and just see what are the key takeaways that you all left with. And James, I'd love to hear if you have anything that you want to identify, just really quickly, just to recenter you back in that board retreat, because while it wasn't that long ago, it probably feels like a fairly long time since we were all there. So that day was structured and kind of with three key points. So one is James had a chance to kind of share sort of his perspective on where SACOG is right now and sort of elevated some of the triple bottom line planning work that he's been thinking about and that you all have been talking about as a board. You all heard from Ashley Swearingen, the former mayor of Fresno, to talk about how Fresno kind of connected economic prosperity and racial equity. She had a whole lot to say. I know that was a pretty engaging session with all of you. And then followed up from that, we brought in a set of regional leaders and stakeholders. So we had Debbie Odo-Kent from the Health Education Council, Dr. Tawny Dotson from Yuba College, Jose Badipa Membo from SMUD, and Randy Sater from Stonebridge Properties. And Evan Schmidt, the CEO of Valley Vision, facilitated a conversation with that group to talk about sort of how do they infuse triple bottom line planning in their work and sort of how they see this fitting into regional planning and SACOG's work. And then, as James mentioned, in the afternoon, we spent that time on the scenario planning work, thinking about a couple of different scenarios that are possible futures for the region, and had you think about kind of what might SACOG have done to get us to that point or not done to get us to that point, and then what's sort of the core role that we'd want SACOG to be playing in that future. So I want to pause, and James, maybe I don't know if you want to lead this off, but I would love to just open up the floor and hear any reflections from that day and things that have stuck with you in the month since we all met.
I'll go first. I will say, and I told you this already, James, that I thought that your presentation really could be the basis of what we're doing, the work we're doing here today. I thought it was very good and hit all those broad topics while still being fairly concise, and I found it very focused. And I think that we should look toward some of from your presentation as we do this. Anybody else? I'm not going to call on you. Just jump in.
From Ashley Swearingen's presentation, something that really hit me right in the head was the fact that you may have the right idea, you may be doing the right thing, but if you're not building the right consensus from the right people, it could be misinterpreted, ineffective, or offensive. So really being about careful outreach and inclusion is the name of the game these days.
Yeah, this is Michael, and I apologize for my screen being off. I just have really bad internet today. But kind of along the same lines as Mike just said, I thought when Ashley basically said, you got to work with everybody, and that includes people that, maybe daily call you out or diametrically opposed to where you're at on something, because they may be going towards the same location, and you just can't discount them or think that you're right and they're wrong, basically. So it was just an eye-opener, because I'm sure everybody has this, but you have those folks in the community that can be, let's just say, trying sometimes, but to the extent that there can be some common ground or areas where you can work together, I thought was a big eye-opener for me. And I'm biased too. She's a friend of mine, so I love the fact that she was able to come talk to us, Ashley, and share some of her knowledge when she was mayor of Fresno. But that really stuck out to me. I think Wendy and I had a good conversation about that on our drive home from the retreat.
Yeah, Patrick, I took an additional lesson from Mayor Swearingen's comments, and that is one of persistence and driven and decision-making driven by deep dive into data. So I thought it was interesting for her when she described her own journey to recognition of challenges that her region was facing that she had discounted prior to seeing real information that sort of opened up her eyes. I thought that was powerful. And then her persistence in recognition that it doesn't happen overnight, and all the comments about stakeholder involvement and reaching out, listening deeply, but also just staying the course. I thought that was something that I appreciated. The other thing generally about the retreat that I mentioned is that I think that this group of board members is really superb. I think that we are doing this is a good time for us to have this conversation, and it's one that I've really enjoyed. Director Branscombe in particular describing his strong commitment to regionalism and his awareness of how it benefits, how the general philosophy benefits the community that he serves. And I think that's we're just seeing that in many different locations, that there's something that ties us together. It's the whole is greater than some of the parts.
So I really appreciate all those comments and feedback. I'm curious, as you think about kind of the retreat, what do you see as the most important implications as we go into a strategic planning process? Are there things that you really want to make sure we're thinking about and holding beyond what you've already just shared? Anything you want to highlight as we move through this process and work towards a draft to bring to you in August? Something that came, yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. Thanks, Daniel. One thing in particular I do think is going to be pretty important is, the ability when possible for folks to be in person together. I think trying to do this process, I think, like virtually I don't think it would be a really great idea. I think that it was very, very useful to have everybody ostensibly in the same room and be able to really have sort of some opportunities to spend some time and fellowship together, because I think that's obviously been missing from most things in the past 2 years. And so, I think it really will help us have a sort of better outcome if that is possible, whenever sort of as the board takes on and staff and others take on this process in the next number of months ahead, months to year ahead.
So totally fine if you have other thoughts that you're holding back on with the board retreat. I do want to shift the attention over to the memo that I prepared, sort of summarize the key themes coming out of those interviews that I did with board members and the focus groups. I want to just note really carefully and clearly up front is what we tried to do as we pulled that memo together is elevate themes that showed up in sort of significant numbers across interviews. So while there are specific quotes that are anonymized, but identify, kind of elevate and add color to the theme, those themes are not, they all showed up across multiple interviews. And there are other ideas that maybe emerged in just one-off conversations that didn't show up in that interview, in that memo. So I do just want to open up the floor just to see if people had any clarifying questions. And then I would love to open it up to anything that resonates or that you wanted to just identify and call out that maybe was compelling or surprising to you. But let's start with any clarifying questions.
We appear to be pretty clear.
Great. I'll take the silence as validation. All right. So anything in particular that resonated or surprised you when you were reading through that?
Well, I think some of the comments that resonate with me are the ones about SACOG as a regional thinker, influencer, actor, that we have a responsibility to think about how to build a shared vision for the region and act on that. I think the state and federal advocacy and technical analysis, I think this captures these comments overall. I think capture they resonate with me. They capture a sense that I have about the role that we have in the region, the role that we should have.
Thanks, Don. Other reflections?
So I'll just reiterate what I said at the board retreat that morning, which is I found this. I was honestly a little stuck on my kind of what's the state of the region, where are we going, and who are we? And on it, I read through Daniel's memo, and I like, okay, you all have just articulated much of what I was actually trying to sort of get out and onto paper, and I honestly couldn't have said some of these things better. So I, Don, like you, because I highlighted some of those quotes as those of you that were there remember, and most of you were. I just think there's some really powerful things in here. In addition, the region needs SACOG to be thinking about what we want out of the region. What does prosperity look like? We want fairness, justice for all. We want people to be able to spread their wings. We can't thrive in one dimension. We need synergy for the region to prosper. So I think there's a lot of really good fodder in here that I think, sort of almost naturally kind of lends itself to the document, the vision, the potential mission statement, and a lot of the text as well.
I mentioned earlier the conversations that we had that I was involved in the cap to cap experience. When we talk about the mega region or the Link 21 or anything or even multiple jurisdictions within our 6-county region, we're getting very, very positive responses. So I think we're poised to have the language that we are building to describe ourselves to ourselves resonates with others outside our little geography here at a very good time. So I think we're on the right track. When we have people who are looking to invest in our region, or people who are, even if we're going to advertise for a job opening at SACOG or in our jurisdictions, when people look at the history, the platform of SACOG and our regional partners, that's a real sales point. That attracts people and it attracts investment. So kind of keeping our act together attracts partners.
Yeah, I'll just, just a comment from me in terms of, and I think I've said this multiple times, and certainly this goes even towards the actions this board took to bring on, a federal and state lobbyist as well. And that is just, what we're doing is really trying to keep up with both the Bay Area and Los Angeles as well. We're talking about our region and the ability to work together as something larger than just our own, individual jurisdictions. And I think that's so important for us to kind of grow up in that sense. We're just not going to get anywhere as a region if we don't have that plan together. And I think those ingredients that some of, the larger urban areas have. And so I think it's just to our betterment. I like what Don said earlier. I think we really do have a good board right now. And I think it was important to get together, even if it wasn't necessarily a specific topic, but just that you could see the collegiality between the board members and the ability, people wanting to work together from very, I think, diverse and politically diverse backgrounds as well. And I think it's a real testament to James and staff as well as to us as board members. So that was important just from a board perspective. But I also wanted to underscore the need for all of us to work together, because I think we just will constantly be left behind. I mean, I see this in the Valley as well. I have a lot of clients in that area, and you just got to be able to compete at some level with the Bay and Los Angeles, and I think this allows us to do some of that.
Yeah, I'll echo that, Michael. Thank you. We can't lose sight of the fact that this is a competitive environment, and we are competing for the same resources as everybody else. I mean, James has done a good job of bringing in people from outside agencies and so forth, so that we can learn from them, both their mistakes and their successes. But at the end of the day, and Green Beans Go is a good example of that. We're here to be, as a region, competitive with all of the other cogs and all of the other regions, and that's an important thing for us to keep in mind.
So I think there's obviously a lot of fodder in that memo that sort of will feed the strategic planning work that James was identifying, and I really appreciate all the input and insight that you've provided. I know we're short on time and you all have other topics to cover, so I think I'm gonna wrap this and turn this back over, unless there's anything else you want to add. But I will say we have a fair amount of work over the course of the next few months. But I feel like what came out of the retreat, what came out of the staff retreat, and this board memo, I think we're really well positioned to bring you something that's coherent and clean come August for you all to react to. And I'm excited to continue that conversation. So thank you all for everything to date, and I'm looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you, Daniel. James?
Yeah, well, that allows us to segue into our next and final agenda item.
Okay. Next item, please, Lynette.
Thank you. It's agenda item number 3, information, executive director performance evaluation update. And I believe Kirk Trost is kicking this off.
I'll kick it right back over to Eric Douglas, who will give a presentation to the committee on our ongoing work with the board ad hoc committee and James regarding an update to the CEO evaluation process.
Thank you, Kirk, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with my colleague, Bill Slayton, to just update you on the work of the ad hoc committee in developing this proposed approach to the CEO, to the executive director evaluation. I'm assuming, and James, please check me on this, that everybody's had a chance to look at this. And so I can proceed in one of two ways. I can give you a quick overview and share on my screen the proposal, and we can approach it that way, or we can launch right into any questions. And James, I just look for a quick guidance from you as to which way you think we should proceed in presenting this.
I'm looking at the screen here. It's really up to the members of the committee. Maybe for those of you that weren't on the ad hoc, everybody got this in advance. But if you did something quick, just to show people, Eric, refresh everybody, this is what the proposal is, that would be a bad thing, and that'll hopefully spur some discussion.
Okay, cool. Well, I do want to thank the people on this call. Many of you had a big role in helping us develop this this draft, and so many thanks to you. This proposal really has three parts to it. It has this introductory section, which I'll read through, and then it has a proposed timetable for how to implement it, and then it has a specific set of recommended survey items to be used in the 360 survey that we're proposing to use as part of the executive director's evaluation. So I'm happy to do a flyover of all three of those sections. And again, please feel free to stop if you have any questions as I do so. So at the macro 15,000, 50,000 foot level, the process would look like this. And we distinguish between kind of year one, we're kicking this off, and years following as we get into run mode with this approach. But every year in January, except in year one, the executive director would propose both agency goals and personal leadership goals to the board, and these would be tied to the calendar year. The executive director evaluation then would occur in the April-May timeframe, with the exception of this year, just because we're slightly delayed this year. The data collected for the evaluation would include a written assessment by the executive director of how well he or she has done in achieving the agency's goals, as well as personal leadership goals. The results of this 360 survey sent to board members, management team members, and the executive director. The information from that survey will be compiled and analyzed. A report summarizing the findings will be prepared for the board and sent to the appropriate committee. In the initial year, our firm would administer the survey, analyze those results, prepare the report. In subsequent years, we make sure that SACOG has all of the tools and information necessary so it can then operationalize this approach. And then I think, as has been the practice, you would meet in closed session with the executive director to discuss his performance. And once that occurs, the executive director would have an opportunity to respond with any takeaways he has to the evaluation, including areas of professional development. So in year one, the timetable, again, here we are at May 19th, hoping for your approval of this proposed approach. We would literally go out in this next week then and have the 360 survey get sent out.
Hey, Eric, sorry, we're May 9th, and so
May 9th, I'm
no
sorry.
approval today. The approval happens at the board meeting, and then from there, that's the next week.
Correction, and I apologize for my lack of understanding of where we are on the calendar. You're right, May 19th, board approves it. May 20th, survey goes out. May 30th, June 10th, we prepare, we look at the results of the survey, we prepare the report. May 20th to May 30th, James responds with his own assessment of his performance vis-a-vis agency goals and personal leadership goals. June 11th, evaluation materials are sent to the strategic planning committee or a subcommittee to discuss. The SPC meets on the 12th to the 14th of June to discuss and develop the evaluation. Also discusses and develops any recommended adjustments to James's salary as appropriate. And then at the June 16th board meeting, the board discusses the executive director evaluation and compensation. The board chair communicates those results. And then by June 30th in this year, the executive director would propose personal leadership goals and agency goals for the remainder of this calendar year, thus catching us up to this calendar tie-in. Year two, now we're into year two, so the executive director would communicate proposed agency goals and personal leadership goals for the coming calendar year. And then everything else would kind of flow, as you can see here, in the same sequence with slightly adjusted dates, given that we're trying to really focus this in the April-May timeframe. And then below here are the survey items. These have been pretty thoroughly vetted by members of this committee, but just to kind of quickly summarize, this would be the rating scale: highly skilled, skilled, somewhat skilled, significant development opportunity, not observed, not enough information to be able to determine. These first questions would be for the board members and the management team. And then these questions would be for the management team and executive director only, because the feeling is that those questions are questions that only they would have the necessary information to be able to answer. And then there would be open-ended questions concluding the survey for all to answer what you consider to be the executive director's most effective leadership qualities and behaviors, what specific qualities and behaviors would you encourage the executive director to strengthen, and then additional questions for the executive director's own self-assessment with regard to positive aspects of his relationships and communications with the board, and specific ways then in which he believes communications and relations could be improved. So that's the proposed approach. Curious if there are any questions, comments? Stop sharing if you like. Yes, Don.
I'm interested in hearing James's assessment of this. The process looks very acceptable to me, and I think it's consistent with my understanding of the ad hoc committee's conversation. But I want to be sure that this is a process that James sees as valuable in his role and for the ongoing improvement of our organization.
Yeah, thanks, Director Saylor. Absolutely. I think we've had some good discussions in the ad hoc. Appreciate this really started, as you remember, the middle of last year after my evaluation, and there were a number of board members that said, I'm not sure I can answer these questions or I have enough information. So I think this is more intentional. It gives you, I think, and me a sort of an added depth of reflection and questions. It includes the management team for the first time in giving me, as Eric said, somewhat of a 360. So it lines up with everything we've talked about, and I'm very comfortable with it. But I also would love to know if, for those of you not on the ad hoc who haven't been diving into this, any other thoughts as well from board members.
I think it's very thorough and straightforward. So therefore my lack of comments, because I think it covers all the bases. I was going to ask the same question, and because we want to make sure that we're not entering into an annual exercise that's so cumbersome and takes away so much time that we're spending all the time evaluating James and not letting him do his job. But it sounds like you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, I'll just say, Director Kennedy, to that point, that we threw out a number of different options in terms of what this survey would look like in terms of length, depth of detail. And I think we kind of hit a nice mean here of both substance, but not so overly involved as to be so cumbersome and just slow everything down.
Okay, agreed.
Other comments or questions?
I was not part of the ad hoc committee, but I agree this seems straightforward and not particularly cumbersome. So totally comfortable with it as is.
Thank you, Director.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of these approaches over the years. I think this is one of the better ones I've seen. The 360 aspect of it is a nice touch.
I think particularly too, one quick additional point, Mr. Chair, I think particularly because we also have so many new directors, but also frankly, so many new staff members as well. I think so, many of us have not had opportunities to even be in the same room together, much less some all be on the same Zoom calls and such sometimes. So I think it's important for that. I really appreciate the 360 approach too. I think it really is going to be helpful as we're started to getting to sort of familiarize some of these new faces with James and his work.
I'm hearing somewhat unanimity here, gentlemen.
I'm hearing the same. And so I guess a process question would be, this now goes to the board for the board to approve. James, you have a particular thought about whether that's just a matter of a pro forma approval, or is that something where you'd like us to present something to the board when that comes up? Or how would you like to proceed?
I think it's worth a presentation, just because I think you've got, this is sort of the home committee for this, as it should be, as its charge is. But I think the questions that we got that sort of in some ways initiated a lot of this last year, you're going to still have those folks who had those same questions who haven't seen any of this. So I think it's worth doing our due diligence, having you walk through much as you did just now, but maybe with a little bit more, just allowing people to, I know it's straightforward and everybody here seems to sort of think, yeah, this makes a lot of sense, but just to make sure that those board members who haven't been part of this discussion, right, feel like they understand the proposed approach. So that's my recommendation. And we can talk a little bit more, Eric, offline about how to.
Well, also not to assume that everybody on the board has been through the 360 process before, so.
So even just basically explaining terms, you're saying, yeah, happy to do that. Well, I do want to really acknowledge and thank the insights and wisdom that many of you on this call and others who are not on this call brought to this process. I think it really, from Bill's and my perspective, and Bill, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, I thought it really reflected a good, open dialogue, lots of discussions with James and Kirk behind the scenes that I think really helped us get to a good product here. So thanks to all.
And I just want to thank Lynette for the amazing task of getting board members together multiple times to discuss this in a very unscheduled ad hoc way. So thanks, Lynette.
Bill, any reflections from your perspective?
Oh, I think I just wish when I was on the SMUD board that I had a tool like this. We just kind of did it in an ad hoc fashion, and this would have made life easier, I think. It probably, maybe better decisions, but we did okay. We mumbled through.
You did okay.
Maybe just to, because in some ways you are now, all of you, not Eric and Bill, but all of you here, right, are there's no formal action today, but what I hear is acceptance, support, endorsement. We'll talk about it at the full board. A few things. The calendar year makes a lot of sense for lots of reasons. We actually now at SACOG do all of our performance evaluations on an annual calendar year basis. Used to be on anniversary dates, and I do like that. And we do work plans and we do goals. So that makes a lot of sense. The sort of spring timeframe on my evaluation is historically, that's my anniversary date, but also we went back and forth on this as well. I think it allows, especially for the cycles when we have a lot of new board members, allows at least 4 or 5 months under your belt, or even have, like a third of the way through the calendar year in the work plan for a little bit of assessment. So those are smaller things, but just in case people were wondering, calendar years, my evaluation coming sort of in the April, May timeframe, we went back and forth on a lot of that. And I still think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Looks like we got it for you guys.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And does that bring us to adjournment? If there's no other comments, James, any comments? No.
We're done and ready to let you all go.
All right, just so everybody knows, the silence from the board is indication that you guys did great work. So.
Silence is consent.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Then we are adjourned.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.